doing, Sam?
Doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm better now. I'm excited. Thank you so much. How's your weekend so far?
So far, so good. This is my first water of the weekend right here.
Oh, enjoy it. It's very important, Sam.
Yeah.
Let's all have a moment to hydrate, guys. Take a moment. Water, everybody. Water. It's delicious. Does the body good. I know we just rushed you on in. We're sitting you up on stage. I'm going to start asking you questions. So, Adam.
What are some of my fandoms? There was a movie from the 70s that I like very much called Star Wars or something like that.
Is that Star Wars?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was, I think, a takeoff of Star Trek. I don't really remember it that well. But, yeah, no, look, there was always these like reruns of stuff, and I don't know why I feel like bringing up some of the lesser known fandoms right now, but I'm going to.
Do it.
Guys, Beastmaster. Crawl, guys. Crawl.
Crawl, yeah.
The movie that answered the question, what happens if you take a boomerang and a bunch of knives and you combine them? And the answer is the glaive, guys. So many of you don't know what that joke means. It's okay. It's okay. It's a lesser known movie. But Liam Neeson's in it, by the way. Speaking of Liam Neeson, Excalibur, right? That also had Patrick Stewart. Welcome to my castle.
That was very good.
Yeah. And my older Patrick Stewart is better.
Is it? Okay. So
Yes, because the older Patrick Stewart takes his time when he tells you about how it was wonderful shooting Star Trek Next Generation because we were so coked up that, we must have murdered dozens of hookers. It was great.
yeah, that deserves a moment. I was wondering about those numbers. Yeah.
I love this. The kids are clapping. Like, you know what? I should not have made those jokes. It's not. It's my fault. This is my fault. I'm sorry, young man. I shouldn't have spoken of all of the blow and drugs that we did on the Enterprise set. It's not appropriate. That's my problem.
Fair enough. And from what I read, you're also really into RPGs as well.
It's definitely into role-playing games. Yeah.
Do you remember the first one that you ever played?
Yeah, D&D. Yeah. Yeah. That was during the Satanic Panic. That was good times. Because if you take the books, apparently if you threw them in the fire, which, they were encouraging you to burn your books, that's always a great thing.
Right.
But, if you threw your books in the fire, they would scream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So. Can you tell us a little bit about your characters that you play?
Well, I was usually the dungeon master.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So my character was God. I don't know.
Satanic Panic, what a time to be alive.
It was great. It was really cool. I had my entire really well curated D&D collection confiscated. That was awesome.
By who?
Parents.
Who?
Okay. No, it was crazy. Like they really did believe. They're like, do you understand what this is? This is training to be a Satanist. There are cults out there right now that are killing goats in the middle of fields and stuff. They actually believed this stuff. They're like, there's satanic cults that are everywhere, and they all want you to play Dungeons and Dragons.
That's great.
And you're like, I just think it's a good, and in the meantime, what were we really doing? Not doing drugs.
Right.
And we were like, instead of running around and being like, oh yeah, we're drinking beer and driving around like our parents did, we were hanging around going, you missed the orc, but then he stands up and he's coming after you. That was what we were doing. And learning how to work together, learning how to cooperate. And they're like, that's Satanism. Cut, 20 years before, they're like, they're just cruising. I'm like, oh no, what's gonna happen? They were nuts. The stuff that I've heard that my parents did, be like, you guys were bad people. Like 100%. We were cool. We were like, but God forbid if we grew out our hair and played D&D. They're like,
How could you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if only the Westminster 3 had played a little more D&D, they wouldn't be they were, right?
Yeah, I don't even know who they were, but yeah, I agree with you.
Oh, that's a whole, okay, we'll talk about
Yeah.
that later. And I know also, concurrently, you also love music, singing, all that fun stuff too. So during this Satanic Panic, was that the type of music you were doing, or what kind of music were you doing?
Yeah, eventually, yeah. You know, that was one of the things about Stranger Things season 4 is that the Eddie character, I'm like, that's Chuck, that's my buddy. Like, I knew that guy. I was actually kind of that guy also, because I was a sort of a copy of my mentor who was like this guy who was a senior in high school when I was in 8th grade, and he sort of took me under his wing. And, you know, he was kind of the Obi-Wan if I was Anakin, you know? And to this day, one of my best friends, like one of the most influential people in my life. But if you saw this guy, all of the parents are like, he's bad news. He's got long hair and he plays the guitar, the electric guitar, not the nylon strings, you know, Simon and Garfunkel. No, but he looked like death. But in my experience, it was always those guys who are gonna be like, hey man, and they're playing music. You'd be like, you guys do drugs? No. Why would we do that? Let's play some music, you know? So they were always like the most chilled out, you know, cool, nice people, at least in my experience. But they looked like they would kill you. And then I became one of them, and they were like, you look like Charles Manson. And I was like, thanks for that.
What a compliment. Yeah. Sure. Justice for Eddie? And before we get into more of your work, I know I also see that you post a lot of your dogs.
Doggies.
Doggies. Can you tell us a little about your dogs and your love for pit bulls and dogs?
Yeah, I've always liked dogs. I always thought dogs were really cool people. And the thing that I did not know was that I have like this weird thing where I keep bumping into abandoned or street animals. And when I say bumping into them, I mean like walk down the street and that dog doesn't have any tags, or where's he going? All right, I'm gonna follow him, you know. And then next thing I know, I have a dog, you know. Like it's my first dog that I grew up with was a Samoyed. I had a really wonderful experience with her, and that was my family's dog growing up. But in LA, I bought a house, and it was like the first time I'd been in LA for like a while, because you keep flying out, doing jobs in different countries and stuff. So finally I'm in LA, buy a house, and within like 3 months, a dog appeared in my backyard and barricaded himself behind my garage. In fact, you guys have seen E.T., right? Like that was what happened to me. There was like howling, like this, it was crazy howling, like didn't even sound like a dog. And the neighbor, midnight, knocks the door. He's like, dude, you gotta do something about your dog. He's really howling. I'm like, I don't have a dog. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah, what is that? He's like, I don't know. It doesn't even sound like a dog. I'm like, oh my God. So I go out and I'm like looking around and I follow the sound to my backyard. And then I see this shape dart behind the garage. I'm like, oh, damn it. So I go back there and then I just see teeth and eyes. And I'm like, you, man. And so I'm like swearing at him and he's just like, argh, and we're just like having this really awful exchange. And so I'm like, great, you know what I'm gonna do? I open the gate, I'm like, get out. I live here, get out, man. I'm sure you know where you're supposed to be. That's cool, you're not supposed to be here. And so I left. And then a friend of mine was like, no, that's a lost dog. You can't just let him out at the gate. I'm like, okay, well, he's probably gone by now. So we get back, and he's still there. So then for the next 3 days, this dog has decided he wants to be in this one spot behind my garage. Wherever he had been in the world, behind my garage was the place he wanted to be for some reason, which is a really sad, sorry state of affairs. So I'm like, well, if he's gonna stay there, I may as well bring him food and water. So I would bring him food and water, and we just kind of hang out back there, and he'd be like, yeah, cool. And then after about 3 days, he started following me back to the house. Like, you know, like I'd like look in the window and he'd be sitting there just like staring at me. So I'm like, okay, dog, let's see what happens. So I pick him up and bring him into a bathtub. And that's where I discovered that he wasn't aggressive, at least toward me, because he hated it, but he didn't try to kill me. So he's like, this is the worst. I hate this. Oh, I want to bite you so bad, but I'm not going to do it. And so then, yeah, I bathed this dog, and then he came in. He's like, that couch right there. Jumps up, passes out, you know? And he's been with me for 8 years. That's my dog Leonard, yeah. So that's my guy. I fell in love with that dog so bad, and he's so cool, and he's awesome. And then 3 years after that, got tricked by a friend to take in another dog who needed a foster home. That was Buster, like pit bull. Like the sweetest little dude. He's a land seal. He looks like a seal. He does. He looks like a seal, and he acts like a seal, and he's a seal. And then 3 years after that, 3 years to, by the way, okay, so 3 years later, me and Leonard, it's during lockdown. Leonard and Buster were all walking around. Maybe Leonard's been with me for 7 years. How long has it been? Anyway, 3 years later, we're walking around, and a dog just jumps out of the bushes in front of us. This is during lockdown. We're near Dodger Stadium, and I'm like, that's weird. And then the dog sort of takes off. I'm like, I'm sure he's going home. Follow him a little bit. He's just going. He keeps going. Okay, cool. So then I start following him, and he keeps looking back at us, right? Eventually, go out by the sort of vaccination site at Dodger Stadium. There's cars everywhere, so I'm concerned about the dog now. And then I run into some cops. I'm like, have you guys seen a dog around here? They're like, yeah, he just went over there. We've been trying to get that dog for days. He's been in this area, in and around. People have taken pictures of him miles away, but he's circling this area. No one can get near him. And he, we even hired a trapper. No one can touch this guy. He's too fast. And I'm like, I'm gonna get him. So then I start going after him, and I'm noticing that he keeps looking back at us. And when I come forward to him with my dogs, he's going straight away. So I'm like, perfect. So I'm like, that means if I go this way, he's gonna go this way. So I started herding him away from the cars deeper into the park at an area where I knew there would be like a fenced-in area. Cornered him, and then like a super responsible individual took Leonard and Buster off leash. Go get him. It made sense to me at the time. I'm just like, guys, you know what we're up to, right? Like, we've been following this guy for like a mile and a half. Get him. So I let them free, and then I just sat there and I'm like, now I gotta not move. Because I also noticed, like, if I even so much as this dog would bolt. Well, eventually, I let my dog off leash, my dogs, and they're just hanging out. And I'm like, yes, yes. And then the other dog, this little orange dude, comes up, the one that we're chasing, and he just wants to meet them. He sniffs them and this and that, and then he's fine. Then he goes away. I'm like, no, he's not done. He's not done. Comes back, wants to hang out with him. I'm like, yep. He wants to. That's why he kept looking back. He was curious about Leonard and Buster. So then, after a while, now they're running around and doing stuff and kind of playing a little bit. And I'm like, yep. And then he's testing the waters with me, making a pass by every now and then to see if I'm going to do anything. And I don't do anything. About an hour passes, and eventually, maybe an hour and a half, eventually he's like lays down nearby. I'm like, yes, we're converting you. And then he comes by, eventually he lets me pet him. I'm like, yes! Because again, like I said, if I even stood up, he would bolt. And then I was like, okay, now I got to get him in a really good mood if I'm going to put a leash around his neck, if I'm going to figure out how to do this. So then I was like, I know. Because I start walking, my dogs are following me, he's following my dog, so I have this trail of dogs behind me. And I take out this stick, I'm like, what do you think about this? He's like, what is that? I'm like, boom, he's like, oh my God! And he's like going after it. And then we get into this huge, intense fetch game. And then I'm like, okay, I think he's in a good mood. And I took one of my dog's leashes and looped it. And he's like, yeah, sure, put that around my neck. Where are we going? And he's been my dog ever since. So dogs. I love dogs. I have 3 dogs now. 3. Which is, I can't do any more than 3. That's it.
Well, until later when we're going to see a dog running and we're going to
No, unless I get like a bigger house and then I'll have more dogs.
Okay. You're like the new dog whisperer, but you're also a really good person, and thank you for doing that, because not everybody would take the time to care for a stray.
Yeah, well, and the weird thing is that, there's all long stories with all 3 of these dogs. But basically, it's clear he was dumped. It's clear that because he's really good with his directional sense. And I was able to go on nextdoor.com and find people that took pictures of him in nearby neighborhoods that were, well, not nearby, they were miles away. So I was able to sort of describe this long circle he was making through these various neighborhoods over a number of days. And it just keep going in circles around this whole area. I'm like, that dog knows where he's extraordinary directional sense. I'll bet that someone from far away drove to Dodger Stadium, Elysian Park, dropped him off, took off, so he had no idea where to go.
Horrible.
Yeah, sucks. But Now he eats really well.
Good,
So.
exactly. Glad you guys found each other.
So yeah, that's Walter. His name is Walter.
So Leonard, Buster, and
Leonard,
Walter?
Buster, and Walter.
I love
yes.
it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, let's pivot ever so slightly and let's talk more about Star Wars. Woo!
Yeah.
So, obviously, like you mentioned, it was one of your fandoms growing up. So, can you tell us about the first time that you got to work with George Lucas?
Well, with Force Unleashed, he worked on that a little bit. He was busy doing Clone Wars, which we didn't know at the time. We knew he was doing something. But he had ideas about how Starkiller would be trained and how Darth Vader would do things at that time in the galaxy. And I think he came up with the idea that he wanted Starkiller to sort of kick off the rebellion in some ways, or be part of that a little bit. It didn't work directly but then he showed up at the release of Force Unleashed. That was cool.
I'm sure.
Oh, dude, yeah, he's on the stage.
It's a terrific game. You're all gonna really enjoy it. I don't really understand this Starkiller thing, but it's fine. You're gonna love it.
So then I worked more directly for him when they brought me over into Clone Wars. So that was when I discovered how truly insane that man is. In the best way. That show is wonderful because George was being crazy about it. Someone said to me, they said the reason it's such a good show is because George is sick of Star Wars. And which makes perfect sense when you watch that show, because he never repeats himself.
No, we already did that in the other movies. We're not going to do now. No, there are these Force priestesses that all share the same face and are different aspects of the same personality, which is going to tie in, really, if you think about it, to the Mortis, which is a dream world, where there's the dark side of the Force, which is the son, and then the daughter, and the father. The father is sick. He's the unifying balance of the Force. So what happens when the balance of the Force is sick? You tell me. Anyway, you're fired.
And you just come up with these.
Darth Maul comes back and he has spider legs. Yeah.
Why, George? Why does he have spider?
Well, because the dark side of the Force is all about me, me, me. It's like a black hole where your heart should be. It's just sucking everything in. You want personal relationships, and you want wealth, and you want power, and all this. But what happens to Darth Maul, because he got cut in half and thrown in a garbage world, so all he could do is gather garbage around him. He's just gathering all this garbage. And as the years have worn on and he started going mad and forgetting who he was, the garbage then took on a life of its own and started crawling around and protecting him and creating this web of evil around him as he lived underneath the earth in hell, basically. And you're like, you definitely came up with Star Wars, for sure. There is no way you did not come up with Star Wars. But George, that's crazy. I know, we're going crazy. Just do it. Let's go forward.
And that was the coolest thing about working on that show, is that it was a straight line from what George said to what we did. There wasn't any, this producer thinks that. Or like any other show or any other situation, you'd have people coming in putting well, I think it's this, and I want to put my fingerprints on that because I'm an executive, And no, not so with the Lucasfilm stuff. It's just kind of like, no, we want to do this, so we're going to do this, and that's it. And that's what it was like. There was just this straight line between George's intention and our execution of his story. So fun.
Wow. I can't even imagine if that's what he thinks during the day, what his dreams and nightmares must look like.
You really don't want to know.
Well,
That guy is, here's the thing. My love of Star Wars and Lucasfilm all comes from the fact that I'm a George Lucas fan. That I think THX 1138 is a fantastic film. American Graffiti is unbelievable, and the chances and risks that guy has taken throughout his entire career are bananas. No one does what that guy did and continues to do. That's just the way he thinks. We're gonna bet he's gonna bet his whole career on doing this movie where, can you imagine? Hey, all right, kid, what's your movie about?
Well, anyway, so Han Solo walks around. He's got a Wookiee co-pilot, which is basically a large dog, which he uses to pilot the Millennium Falcon, which is basically a hamburger with a pickle on the side. And then you have the X-Wings, which are just basically X's. It's weird. And they fight the TIE fighters to get the Jedi Knights with their laser swords, and the Space Wizards using the magical, mystical energy of the Force.
We have no idea what you're talking about, dude. Here's $10 million, make a low budget film. I mean, so then he bets his whole career on a movie that he can't even explain to people. Let's get this clear. He can't explain the movie. He's got to get Ralph McQuarrie, pay this guy to create art so he has something to show the Fox executives. So they go, okay, that looks cool. I still don't know what it's about, but I mean, that looks cool. And then he starts making this movie, and he uses techniques that have never been made, but he's never been done before. He creates his own special effects company because no one knows how to do this. What kind of a crazy idiot even tries to do that and yet succeeds on like every level? That movie is astonishing. Because think of all the information in that movie, you know, the Jedi Knights, and the Space Wizards, and the Empire, and the Clone Wars happened before, and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Han Solo, and all this stuff, and the Death Star, and Alderaan, and Princess Leia. Like, it's a dizzying amount of information, but when you watch that movie, it feels breezy. You're like, yeah, of course. Yeah. Oh, he fought in the Clone Wars? Interesting. You know, like, it's all nonsensical gibberish, but he makes it feel like a lived-in world, and you don't feel overwhelmed. You just breeze your way through the whole movie. And by the end of it, you have Star Wars. And every bit of that movie is like congruent with the Star Wars that we make today. That's how right he got it. The first time, on one try, one turn at bat, doing everything that has never been done before. And then what does he do? I mean, like, look, I sit around and I record music on Pro Tools and stuff like that. Why? Because George Lucas developed the technology to do that, to create digital audio and have digital editing. And people are making, like, you know, YouTube channels and using digital editing software. Why? Because George Lucas pioneered that. And we have these incredible special effects movies because George Lucas pioneered how you could do that digitally. And by the way, Hollywood fought him every step of the way. And villainized, oh, he's destroying, he's killing the way we do things. And he's just like, no, the way we do things sucks. It should be done this. You know, this is an easier way, you know. And so this guy, you know, and again, like, what kind of maniac then wins making Star Wars, then takes all of that money and invests it into The Empire Strikes Back. That was an independent film. And then Return of the Jedi, that's an independent film. Fox did the first one. But he negotiated away his directing fee so that he could get the rights to make the sequel. First of all, I'd love to have been on that meeting. Can you imagine? Fox is like, guys, that Cleopatra movie almost destroyed the entire studio, but Star Wars, guys, we did it! Popping the champagne. Yes, we got it. You know, we didn't even know what he was doing, but I'm so glad we took the bet. George Lucas came through. 20th Century Fox is on top, baby. You know what we should do? What's that? We should make a sequel. Oh, yeah. Let's make a sequel to Star Wars, yeah! Oh, this is going to be so great, because you know the Jawas, people love the Jawas. Let's put more Jawas in there. And they just loved all that, and it's going to be on Tatooine, and it's going to be amazing. We're making a Star Wars sequel. And you see in the back of the room, there's like a lawyer, junior lawyer, who's like sweating, going like... And they're like, Brian, get over here. Why are you looking so nervous? We're popping some champagne. He's like, I got the contract for Star Wars. Well, we're doing a sequel. Yeah, we are doing a sequel. Well, George is doing a sequel. Yeah, but we're doing it, right? No. No, he negotiated so that he got the sequel rights. We don't own it. What? What kind of hole would negotiate away his own? Why do we? No, this can't be. I just wanted more Jawas in my Star Wars. What's going on? And then George is like, yeah, check it out. We're going to the ice planet Hoth. And you're not even going to believe what the deal is with Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. You know? So, like, he and then he takes, and they're like, well, we can finance it, right, George? No, I'm going to pay for it myself. Let me light up a spliff. No, I mean, and then when The Empire Strikes Back happens, what does he do? He takes that money, invests it in Return of the Jedi and its Skywalker Ranch. This place where he develops all kinds of, we're going to have a video game called Lucasfilm Games or LucasArts or something, and then we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And he just kept investing in the creative process, creating things like digital audio, digital editing, all this stuff. and it has completely changed the world several times over in terms of not just the technology that we use, but the ideas that have gone into his films have permeated our culture and has become, part of the lexicon of our culture. So, yes, my fandom in Lucasfilm and in Star Wars is because I am a fan of George Lucas, which is why when I saw the prequels and I was, old enough to be one of those guys who's like, this is crap, man. Yeah, nah. And I'm just like, I want to watch this more closely because this is George Lucas that did this. What is he going for here? Why is this so different than what I expected it would be? Because I've been thinking about Star Wars prequels my entire life, ever since the originals came out. I knew he would do these. This is not at all what I expected. And because it wasn't what I expected, I learned a valuable lesson, which is don't repeat yourself. Try something new. Push yourself in a new direction that you've never been in before. And I learned that from the prequels, being like, this is why I'm watching these movies over and over again in the theater because they're so different than what I expected. And then because I was able to get on his page, I was suitable to be brought in to work on Star Wars in various capacities. Because at that point, when Dave would be like, well, it's kind of like Qui-Gon Jinn. I'm like, I always felt like Qui-Gon was like, and Dave would be like, the father that Anakin needed. Yeah, right. And then the father, he falls, he's like, no, it's like the father, goes away, and then it's the older brother that has to raise the kid, and he's not ready. We're like, that's what George was saying, right? He's like, yeah, I think so. And because we were studying those movies, we were like, what is George thinking here? What is going on? So anyway, I'm a huge fan of anything that guy comes up with. Huge.
I was going to say I'm a fan, but after hearing the way you talk about it, I'm an even bigger fan of George and all of that.
He's a maniac. He's just absolute maniac. And again, I'm not even discussing half of the risks that guy has taken in his career. All of them insane risks. And they've paid off, and we get to benefit from that.
Fair. Well, I think we have time for a couple questions, so if you want to pick, or if you want me to pick, it's up to you.
Go for it. Yeah,
okay, sure. Let's start over here, Spider-Man.
Hey, what's up? Good to talk to you again. Sam Witwer, you are a very beautiful man. I think most people
I declare.
if there was a person that was handsome Squidward, it's you. All right. So my question, I could ask about Star Wars questions, but I'm sure people in the future will ask about them. Bro, you at the gym, because you're always just like jacked, man. Like, how big you are.
Just steroids, really.
Because you don't have to hit the gym nearly as hard.
No, you know what it is ever since the lockdown, I just do stuff at home. And I find that if I'm consistent, then I have some results. But I will tell you, man, I put on like major pandemic weight, like huge pandemic weight. So I'm just trying to work it off. That's all.
Well, you're looking great.
Right here. That's right. I put on like 20 pounds here, and then look at this, right? Look at this. You know what I realized is that if you're gonna do a Schwarzenegger impression, right? Because I'm always doing it.
But it wasn't until the pandemic that I realized that the key to a good Schwarzenegger impression,
because you could sit here and do this Schwarzenegger impression and go, come on, let's go, do it, come on, do it.
and that's fine. But your Schwarzenegger impression is so much better if you get a little bit smug.
Right? Yeah, look at this with your Spider-Man outfit right there. You're looking great. Yeah, definitely. Sure thing, right? Lou, look at you. You're doing so great. And even if you quit now, you're number 2, which is so good. But can you imagine what it's like to be me 6 times Mr. Olympia, right? But you're doing great. And I'm definitely going to tell your sister about it, right? Yeah. Idiot.
This has been a ride. We only have time for one more question because I'm seeing everybody come in for the next panel. So, do you want to pick the final question? You want me to pick it?
You do it.
Okay, we have to go. Let's go, Spider-Man.
So I was wondering, can you do the Kenobi speech?
Oh, dude, it's gonna blow my voice. I totally can't. Because I will literally not be able to speak to people coming up. It blows my voice out. Yeah.
But
Dude,
it's
Tom.
okay. Let's pick one more.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, let's go. You in the back with the glove.
If Disney decided to make a Force Unleashed 3, would you come back for it?
Be like, no.
Next question.
I would totally do it.
Go ahead.
Real quick, just want to say, I literally knew nothing about you because my boyfriend's a huge fan of you. And just hearing you talk about your dogs and your passion for George Lucas and Industrial Light is Magic is really inspiring. My question is, would you ever want to play a live action Maul?
Oh, God. I mean, you know, there's a lot of people that are, you know, my thing is this. Look. If they needed me to do, because with deference to Ray Park for you know, what he brought to it, I would say if Lucasfilm needs any character that I've done, they do have my number. And I have always found that the best way to deal with them is just to get out of their way. You know what I mean? Like, I am always bugging them, for sure, but I'm always bugging them like, what's going on in the Ahsoka series, dude? You know, like, I'm not, I feel weird about like, hey, you know, I'd be interested in doing Star Wars. It's not my way to ask for a job, especially when these people are my friends. It's actually way cooler to tell your friends, like, you don't have to hire me. You need me, I'm here, but you don't have to hire me. And I've done some behind the scenes things for them that probably for another 5 years or so will go under the radar. But yeah, they keep me around.
Yes, they should. Well, we're out of time. So, any final thoughts you want to leave us with here this afternoon?
No, not even one. That's right. Go out there and you gotta put 20 pounds here, 20 pounds here. That's right. Do it. Come on. Do it.
Okay, well, that was perfect.
That's it.
Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you for the life advice. One more time, everybody.